Today I'm going to do a basic tutorial on Scrivener, and I'm going to try to make it as fast as I can so you can get up and running as fast as you can with Scrivener. Scrivener is a lot like OneNote or Evernote. It's kind of a notebook where you can keep your draft of your novel and you can keep your notes and you can keep everything organized and look at it. You use it in conjunction with Word, or you could use it totally by itself to write a novel or a book. So it helps you organize any type of written work that's longer than, maybe 10 to 30 pages. It makes it easier to move stuff around. For instance, if you wrote a novel in Word, you might end up with, say 300 pages. It's hard to work on that novel with 300 pages, right? Because you're scrolling up and down and looking for stuff. So what you usually would do if you're just using Word is you would put each chapter, for example, into a separate file. But then it becomes hard to reorganize and rename those chapters. Like if you want to move one chapter in front of another or something, if you want to move the order around like you tend to want to do when you're first starting out with a novel, you start to add chapters in and remove chapters and move them around. It's harder to organize it that way. And then you have all of these chapters. So if you have 40 chapters in your novel, then you have to pull them all into one document, which is a drag. In Scrivener, you can organize those all together, move them around as you want, and then put out a final Word document that's already in order, and then you can do edits in Word and go on from there. So look at it as your workflow, where you might, in the past, you might have written your first draft on a piece of paper or on a tablet and given it to somebody to type, or you might have typed it yourself, the next draft, and then you may have taken that draft, given it to an editor, they marked it up, and then it's retyped again. That's your workflow, so that you start handwriting, you get it typed up into a manuscript, you take it to an editor. With Scrivener or with a software process, you may start out in Word writing things and you may write them into chapters, but as you start to organize it, you might bring it into Scrivener at that point, and you might work on organizing it, and you can even start to write it within Scrivener and edit it within Scrivener if you want to. Then you may generate a Word document to send to an editor or to send to the publisher. The nice thing about Scrivener is once you have it in Scrivener, you can output it into different formats that you might need. Like you might need a manuscript format or a final publishing format. So it keeps you from having to actually do a lot of re-editing at different stages in the process. So right here, I have an example of a novel I wrote, and I actually, up here I have, is where the manuscript is, and I have these little separate subfolders where I broke up the chapters in groups of 10 just to make it easier while I was organizing and editing it. But you can do this any way you want. You can change it in between novels or books, however you want, and there's some templates. So let's start off real quick and create a new project. So we go up to new project, and here you see we have a bunch of templates. So if we go down here to fiction, it has a novel, and it has a novel with parts. The difference is there's a novel format just goes chapter after chapter. The novel with parts starts part one with chapters, part two with chapters, and so on. And we have some nonfiction things templates in here, and even script writing templates in here, and then some miscellaneous ones. And we can create our own templates. So initially, you'll start out, and as you continue to use Scrivener, you probably develop your own template, particularly if you work in a particular format all of the time, and it just makes it a little quicker for you. So you can adapt it to however you want to use it. All right, so let's start off with a blank format right here, and we're going to go down here and click Create, and we're going to name our project. I'm going to just go Demo Novel. I'm going to put the year here too. So you can name this whatever you want. Usually you would use the working title of the book or novel you would be creating. And we're going to go save. And it opens up a new window, and this is our new Scrivener right here. So if you use OneNote, it would be like creating a new notebook. So this is a new notebook. This is what we can do. We can use it for research. We can use it for writing, and I'm going to show you how to bring stuff into it as well that you may have written already in Word. So by default, a blank project has a draft up here, which would be your novel, and I'll just go with novel because it's primarily what I'm talking about, but it applies to a nonfiction book as well. And then we have research. So you would drag research into here, anything you have. And so you have it right in the same program as you're organizing things and as you're writing. You can also write things on TextPad, bring it in here. You can write things in Word, bring it in here. So however you like to work, you might normally just write with Word and then bring it into here as you're organizing it. And then you can bring parts of it back out into Word to work on as well. And you can just work on it within Scrivener itself, however it works best for you. So I don't have any research right now to pull into here, but I do have some drafts. So the nice thing about this is you can use it to organize previous projects you were working on. Like if you have a single draft or a bunch of chapters you've worked on that are in separate files, you can bring it in. So let's start with that, because that will kind of populate this so you can get an idea. So we have our draft here. We can actually rename this by clicking on it to the working title of whatever our work is. That's what some people do. Or you could leave it as draft, or we could, let's just change it to manuscript. So you can change that to whatever. We're going to change it to manuscript for now. So if I have previous files in here, I can go here and I can go to add, and I can go to existing files. So I have a bunch of files, right? And so this file right here is one long manuscript. And then I have some files that are in chapters. So I can bring this all in very easily. Let's start with a longer manuscript. If we open this, just hit OK there, and it will convert it. So it's brought this all in here. And I have a bunch of separate chapters in here. And so I want to break it down. This is actually a book an actual novel I took off of Project Gutenberg, A Room with a View. And we're using this for example purpose. So I have it broken down into separate chapters, but it's in one thing. Now I want to split it off into separate files that I can work on. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and I'm going to go up and I'm going to go to find and I'm going to go chapter. So when I go to next here and I find this chapter, I can right click on here and I can split a selection, or I can split a selection with the selection as the title. And so let's just, I'm going to just use this. I have a chapter number here and a chapter name. I'm going to just use the chapter number. And so I can go split selection with title. And you can see that it's over here, it's put a new section in chapter 2. And so we can go here again and go to our main document here and go next, highlight that, and then go split with title. And then I can go on down all the way through this and split this up into chapters in the same way. All right, so I've gone through the manuscript and I've split it up into chapters using the way that I showed you in these earlier chapters right here. This chapter right here is named after the original manuscript. I can change this to chapter 1. Instead of putting a Roman numeral here, I'm going to write the word 1 only because I want to delineate it so you can see when I'm moving things around. So this is a chapter that I renamed right up here. Now I have more chapters that I want to bring into here. And so I can go back up to here and I can go add, go to existing file. And back here you see we have all these. I could add them one at a time. But since I have a lot, like I might have 40 chapters already written, and I can bring these all in. So I can select these all and I can go open and go okay, let it convert them. And you can see I kind of made a mistake because now look, I have chapter 10 through 20, but they're not in the right order. Here's one, the one that I renamed, and here are the other sections that I broke off. I don't want them down here. So I can click on the first one and then hold shift and select them all and then just drag them up to the top here. And so now I've reordered them. So you can see how powerful that is. You can always reorder things as in Scrivener. So this helps you reorganize them. The other thing we could do is, let's say we added a new chapter, and we'll call this new chapter. So we could see the name. You name this however you want it. What I usually do in the draft is I actually like to put a number in front and use the actual title, and then I can move stuff around and I can renumber if I want, or I don't need to renumber it necessarily. Whatever makes it easier to organize these for me. Like I said, I actually pulled groups of 10 separate because it just made it easier for me to keep track of. When you compile a draft, it will automatically set it up to number the chapters for you, and you can even set the format to tell it chapter 1 and write out the word or the number or whatever you want. So you don't have to worry about what the final name of these are on. These names are just to help you organize and move things around, and you can change them however you want. Like I said, I like to put the name of the chapter if I'm going to name each chapter, and then I might put a number there, or I might just name them all by chapter, whatever is easy. So we have this new chapter here, and I'm going to just take another chapter here, and I'm going to grab a paragraph out of it and copy it, just so I have text for an example. But say I'm writing this right here, and I have my new chapter. Once again, I can take this new chapter and drag it down into any area that I want, so I can organize it that way. The other thing that I can do is I can go in here, and if I click on the manuscript, it gives me these cards. And these cards will have the name up at the top, and I can put like a little summary right here if I want. But what it does is it takes like the first paragraph of what's ever in there by default, so you can look and go, oh, that's that paragraph. You're probably going to know by the beginning of the paragraph by the first paragraph what the chapter was about. So that's one easy way to organize it. We can also then go into here, like so. We could click on this, and it's not deleting everything in the chapter. And I can put whatever I want here. I can summarize it however I want. This is the intro, and I can write on whatever I want right there. So you can see we have that. But when I go into chapter 1, we still have everything, all the information in our chapter as well. And so then the other thing is we can go up here to this I and go information, and you can see up here it has a synopsis that I wrote, and I can write the synopsis here as well. So I can go back and see what it says about the synopsis out here, and I can edit it while still looking at my document. And I can also put notes down here, any notes that I want about it, which is also a nice function. So you can note down, I need to research something here as well. The other thing we can do here is, particularly if you're bringing it in from an old manuscript or you've scanned it in, you can go over here and you can go to this snapshot. And if we hit the plus, it will create a snapshot here. And we can title the snapshot, but it dates it and times it automatically. So if we're working on something and then we decide we want to go back, we can take a snapshot before we start working on something or at any point. Because if we start writing something and we go, I want to go back to the previous version, I've changed my mind. Instead of having to go back to another file, or even if you've overwritten it and you don't even have a backup of it, you may have to rewrite the original version anyway. You can just go back, and you can do a snapshot for any file. So if you have everything separated in chapters like this, you're not going back to the previous version of the entire manuscript. It's just that particular chapter. And we can go back from snapshot, and we can click on this icon right here, notes, and go back to the notes that we had. Or we can go back to the little inspector or the little eye information type of icon up here and click that closed if we want to. The other thing we can do is up here, you can see that we also have different views. So this is the view that we would edit or write it in if we want to just write or edit from within here entirely. If we click back on manuscript right here, we can use these icons to change the view. So we can click on here and have the cards that we had previously, or we can go to this right here, which gives us a listing of all of the documents and chapters and such that we have here, and we can label them. We can put a status on them. So like if it's a draft or we need to rewrite it or whatever, we can put that in there. Under status, we can go here. By default, it's no status. We can go to do, in progress, first draft, revised draft. So we can use this to let us know what stage we're on. We can even edit these and put our own status types in. And then we have section type here, and the little down arrows way over here. And so down here, we can put what type of section it is or edit that as well. So that's just another way that you can organize and look at things. So we can also go between chapters pretty easily. So if we're moving around or we need to go back and look at something, we can do that as well. And we can actually go over here and split the screen and look at different chapters side by side. So if we have chapter 2 over in this one, we could go to this one and go to chapter 6, or the new chapter that we're working on. And so we can look at them side by side. So this is a nice thing in case we have to reference something in another chapter, or even move paragraphs from one chapter to another. So if we're looking at this and for whatever reason we have a section we want to move to this chapter, we can have them side by side and cut and paste them as well. And then if we want to just go back to a single page or a single chapter, we can just click on this again and have just one chapter or section or document that we're looking at a time, which is a nice feature. Now, the next thing that we can do is I'm going to click here and I'm going to go plus and add a new well, we don't want a document. We can add a new document and put it out here, but I'm going to go and move that to the trash. When we move something to the trash, it's here so we can bring it back later. So if you delete something and decide you want it back, you can empty the trash, of course, but you can just leave it in the trash and bring it back for later. The other thing we can do is make sure we don't have anything highlighted there, and we go plus, or go up here to this down arrow and go new folder. And so we can create a new folder down here. I like to always create something I call archive, or you could call it old drafts. Or you could create something called deleted chapter. So let's say I have a chapter in here and I don't want the chapter anymore. Say I decide to take this out. I usually just have a thing deleted or archive chapters, and I'll pull them down into here. So I might pull a couple of them down and say. But if I decide later, you know what, I think I'm going to put that back in, I can just drag it back up and in there. So, and we can take this folder too, and we can drag it to wherever we want. Let's drag this above research. So we can put separate folders in. And so if you're pulling chapters in and out of your novel, you can do that as well. And that's a nice feature as well, because as you may want to pull things out, but you may want to reference them in, like, say you've written a draft before and brought them in, or you've written a document that has bits and pieces and stuff. You can move it into another area where you had, you could call it notes, you could call it whatever you wanted. But you might have things that you're not sure where they're going to fit or whether you want to include them or not. And so you can create a folder and put all those things in it, and then go and reference them and use parts of it in different chapters. Or you can decide, hey, I'm going to make a chapter out of this and just pull the whole thing in and create a new chapter and then start writing with it. So you can use your own folders or create your own folders to move different documents or chapters in and out of the manuscript as you want. Or if you, as opposed to doing a snapshot, you might just copy the document and put it in here, or even replace the document with a new draft entirely. So it's another way to save old drafts. You can do it that way. Now, the final thing before I end the video is, I'm not really going to go into this, but I want to show you this. There's a section here called Compile. And Compile will let you choose. Now, it looks at everything that's in the manuscript. And it has, by default, it has everything checked off here. All these chapters that we have right over here. And you can see it says Compile Manuscript. You can actually select current selection as well. At any rate, you can, if you wanted to print just certain chapters, you can check the ones that you want to print. But as opposed to just printing, if you want to put it into like a PDF or Word format, you can put it into Word format as well. And it will pull it into a Word document so you can edit it or print off that Word document or do whatever you want with the Word document. And then there are all of these different formats here. We have it on the default format, but there are different formats you can set it into, and you can create your own format. So this helps you after you've organized everything in here, and you may have written certain things in here, and you may have pulled things in and out of Word. And one way you can pull them in and out of Word is, like, say I wanted to only pull chapter 7 back into Word for whatever reason, because I wanted to do editing in there instead of within Scrivener itself. You can do that as well. So this allows you to export what you do in Scrivener into different formats. And I'll do a separate video on that because that's a little more complex. But it's also a very powerful feature of Scrivener to be able to reformat this stuff. And you can, there are a number of ways that you can pull it out using compile to different formats. So that's pretty much it for an overview. The thing to remember is that we can create different folders in here however we want. We can also change the icon by right-clicking on it. So we have all these different icons. So we can delineate, like there's a light bulb icon. So if you wanted to create a folder with ideas, for example, we could go over here and we could go new folder. We could say ideas, and then just so it stands out, we can go down here and change the icon to a light bulb. So then you always know where your ideas are. So as you use it, you'll probably come up with new ideas for new sections that you have for the types of things that you need to put in there. You can actually even put photographs or web pages in these folders as well. But like I said, the important thing to remember is you have folders and you have documents in here, and it's sort of like organizing it in Windows in just a folder and as documents, but it's much easier to work with because we can go to our manuscript, we can click on any chapter and look at it right away. Whereas if we were organizing this just in Windows, we would have to find our chapter and then pull it open. So we'd have to open it in Word, and then it would be another document, and it starts to get harder to deal with and a little more confusing. This just makes it easier for you to see everything at once or multiple things at the same time and work on. So that's the quick tutorial. I'll try to put up other videos about different functions of Scrivener. But once you get used to this, you'll start to figure out a lot of things probably on your own. And one of the best ways to do it is instead of just starting off writing a novel in this or starting a novel, you can actually create outlines or create a folder where you have outlines and character sketches and stuff in it. Instead of doing that, take a manuscript you already have, maybe even one that you've already published before, and pull it into Scrivener and just see how your own work works with it. Or you could go to Project Gutenberg or someplace like that and bring down a manuscript of an old novel that's been published in the past, maybe your favorite classic novel, bring it in and break it down into chapters and see how that works, and try moving it around and playing with it with a larger document, and you'll see how powerful that it is. Like I said, once I started to get used to this, I started to bring in old drafts of stuff that I had and old projects that may have been in multiple files, and I started to bring it in and started to organize it within here just because I can look at those projects and go back to them and work on them whenever I want, or just even it makes it easier to just look at them and see what I actually did and what my thoughts were at the time, and if I want to continue with that particular project or manuscript.